Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our meeting for Grandex Model UN. Today, we will be discussing Units 1.3 to 1.5, that is position papers, speeches, and topic discussions. So let's not waste any time, let's get right to it. So, like I mentioned, in this presentation, we'll be tackling 3 units. First is position papers and working papers. Working papers we actually didn't get to. That will be part of your homework this time is understanding working papers, reading a document that I gave you guys, and responding to some comprehension questions. 1.4 will be an introduction to public speaking, how we give speeches in Model UN, particularly for prepared speeches. And 1.5 will be discussing what it means to be a subtopic based thinker and really understanding how we discuss current events in Model UN. Alrighty, so we're going to start with position papers and working papers. So I highly recommend you guys take notes of this. Position papers are 4-paragraph research essays on a specific topic. They are the primary way for delegates to aggregate their research into one place, form and articulate some of their proposed solutions, and be recognized for awards. We will teach position paper writing through DBQ style assignment writing, where you're given the sources. If you guys are joining us from WAP, it's going to be like that, except we actually, like, instead of in a normal position paper where you have to go out and get the research, this time we just give it to you, and all you need to do is write it down. So, the 4 paragraphs of the position paper. First is a contextualization and topic introduction. What is the topic that we're talking about, and why is it happening? 2, international action and why it hasn't been sufficient. So, what has the UN done? What have other blocs done? And why isn't it working very well? Because obviously, if it worked, we wouldn't be discussing it. Third paragraph, the delegate's country action. So what has your country done about it? This is a really important paragraph. And the reason why is because a lot of novice delegates get tripped up in thinking that their nation needs to be directly involved in the topic at hand. For example, if we're talking about the India-China border conflict, you'd think, oh, if I'm, I don't know, Norway, I won't have any involvement in it because I'm not India or China. The way that you do it is you go up a level in terms of the topic. So we're thinking like, okay, India-China border conflict, let's go up a level. Border conflicts in general. How has Norway treated those? Norway's had plenty of border conflicts in the past. So you can see how has Norway dealt with those and what diplomatic actions they've taken. Beyond that, you can see you can go up a level in terms of national association. Norway is associated with the European Union. Not part of it, part of the EEA, but close enough. And you say, because we're aligned with the EU and this is what the EU thinks, this is what Norway thinks. Does that make sense? Alrighty. We're going to have some practice with that and kind of knowing how you go up a level in order to make sure that the third paragraph makes sense. And finally, fourth paragraph, proposed solutions. What do you and your country want to do about it? So this is the most important paragraph because this is where you are proposing novel solutions to the issue and you're also reinforcing your country policy. So there's a whole lot of really important things that happen there. In Unit 3, delegates will be writing multiple position papers with and without research prompts. And this is all in preparation for our October conferences. So we're going to read a position paper from GOMUN 2020. This is the Houston Area Model UN Conference. The topic of this position paper is on the infringement of LGBTQ plus rights in Chechnya. This is the first paragraph. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to read it. And thank you for joining us, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I was in tutoring.
No worries. Alrighty, I'm gonna call on some people. I want you to tell me first, did this paragraph introduce you to the topic? Did you get the contextualization for why it's happening? And did it show that there is in fact a problem happening that merits the attention of the committee? Let's start with Riley. Why don't you tell us what's going on here?
All right, so you introduced the historical context of the topic, which is really helpful because you understand where they're coming from. And then towards the end, you start using, I like the language that you use because it's, like humiliation, horrors, sadistic. You're using those words to like really draw the people's attention to the nature of the conflict and why it should be resolved.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can actually annotate on this, so that's a good thing. So that same year, so for the freshmen that are joining us, so you can understand what's happening here. First, this is a piece of paper that I wrote. We start pretty far back. So we're starting in 1762. And the reason why this is important is because you're giving us already a very broad historical context. Now, when you're going this far back, you need to make sure that you still stay on topic. So my point in this, and the reason why I'm referring so far back, is understanding why Chechnya has such a virulently homophobic Islamic doctrine. That way, you can draw the line back from as far back as you can and make it all the way to the present. So here you say, blah, 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 traditionally bound to tribal religious beliefs, Chechen slowly developed Sunni Islam, and then the Soviet Union killed like all of them. They had the First and Second Chechen Wars, also really important to mention, their relationship with Russia. Beginning in 1994 and ending with Chechnya being absorbed into the Russian Federation. And over all of this time of Chechen and Russian hostility, the only thing that the Chechens actually have to support them, particularly in the past when they were supported by Persia, was their Islamic doctrine. That made it become very radical, very conservative, and trying to distinguish themselves from these Christian Russians. Chechens today abide by a variant of state-sponsored Sharia law, and they enforce Russia's position on homosexuality and their own active persecution. So right there, okay, so Chechens today, right here is the turn of the paragraph. So this has all of this has been historical context, this is all context, and all of this now is actual topic overview. So why is the topic happening and what is the topic? Make sense? Make sense? Cool. Next one. Again, sometime. This is paragraphs 2 and 3. Alrighty. Isabella, why don't you tell us about paragraph 2?
So paragraph 2 was basically saying, like they sent, oh my God, I forgot. They sent somebody to where all these LGBTQ members were being detained, and they reported their findings. Yeah, reporter, is that how you say it?
Rapporteur. Yeah.
Okay. And it explained what they did, and they sent that person in, and they basically like did research, and they conducted their findings to confirm that the allegations were true. And then it began talking about like the changes that needed to be made
Mhm.
in order to pretty much stop what they were doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well. Very well done. So, in paragraph 2, we are still talking impartially. Something important to note, well, paragraph 2 is like half impartial, half partial. The first paragraph is completely impartial because all that you're doing is establishing historical context and actually talking about the issue. Paragraph 2, this is where you become a bit more partial, really because you have to say, the international response to Chechnya's systematic detainment has been minor. We're kind of playing into the fact that the international action has not been sufficient. There may be a case in Model UN where if you actually support the status quo and you think that like, oh, we've done what we've needed to do, you would say the international action has been sufficient. And then you'd say in the fourth paragraph, like no action needs to be taken besides from these small things. But aside from that, in this context, we are saying that it has not been enough. They sent in the special rapporteur. They found that the allegations made by the special procedures were correct, and that the UNHRC issued a joint statement acknowledging that they did read the rapporteur's findings and that they were deeply concerned. They were demanding that all detained individuals be released immediately. This is really big because we're in the UNHRC, and to know that the committee has already made its stance that everyone who is being, like, all the people who are being falsely detained in Chechnya should be released, that is already a really big thing that you're taking to committee. And as well, in late May, this was something that I just found in my research, is that they actually filed a criminal complaint in the European Court of Human Rights, and they were citing Russian authorities' refusal to investigate these claims. This is also very important. Here, you're setting the ground to any kind of action that you want to take regarding compelling investigation. You know that Russia, to some degree, is complicit in what's going on. And by establishing that relationship, you're already, trying to build your arguments in committee. Any questions about paragraph 2 that you guys didn't understand? Alrighty, cool. Also, something to keep in mind up here, I'm gonna box it because it's very important. There we go. So, UA Rus 4/2017 and 1/2019, those are the classification numbers, or the reference numbers for certain documents. These documents were submitted by the UNHRC special procedures, and I found them just by digging into a whole bunch of UNHRC documents. This is how you will reference them. You won't reference them as like the report, the fourth report from the rapporteur on Russia on 2017. You just say UA Rus 4/2017. Alrighty, paragraph 3. If you've already read it, just, reread it. Alrighty. Why don't we hear from Faith? Could you tell us about paragraph 3? What's going on there?
Paragraph 3, it's basically just about how South Africa has legal protection for the LGBTQ community and how they're like very progressive on their rights for LGBTQ compared to the other country. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Chechnya?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Okay, so you're absolutely right. This one, first of all, pop quiz to you guys. What country is this position paper representing?
South Africa.
Yes. You know that because it is going to be the first thing that they say in paragraph 3. They're going to say their country name. So say the Republic of South Africa or the French Republic or the People's Republic of China. It's always going to be the opening to paragraph 3. So you immediately know what country they're representing. So I'm South Africa. I'm in the UNHRC. And what I'm saying is, of course, I'm South Africa. We're talking about Chechnya, this little Caucasus region next to Russia. What does South Africa have to do with Chechnya? Well, technically nothing. However, the way that I made the connection was by the connection of LGBTQ plus rights and how our countries are protecting them. Obviously, Chechnya is not doing a very good job, but what I was able to do is I was able to go in, find South Africa's laws on LGBTQ plus people, and make a policy proposal, or apologies, make a policy framework from which South Africa is going to approach this. In this case, being that we support the LGBTQ plus community, and that we want to be, how should I say, we want South Africa to be in a proactive place in order to be helping the people of Chechnya. We don't want to support the status quo. So something that I actually thought was really interesting is that South Africa was the first in the world to outlaw discrimination based on sexual orientation. Fun fact, the US only did that this year, is when they outlawed employment discrimination based on sexual orientation. So yeah, interesting stuff on that. Civil Union Act, it became the first country in Africa and the 5th in the world to legalize same-sex marriage. South Africa firmly believes that LGBT plus individuals are equal citizens in every respect. And although South Africa is yet to make a direct statement on the situation in Chechnya, again, this is very big because you're acknowledging the fact that maybe you haven't said something specific about it. You draw the line between this at the beginning and what you're going to do in the committee. So the delegate finds it appropriate to extend his country's stance of non-discrimination, protection, and equality for the LGBT plus community to the business of the council. Any questions about paragraph 3? No? Alrighty. Next one. Paragraph 4. Again, I'll give you guys some time to read this. Alrighty, so let's discuss this. First of all, before we get started, I actually made a mistake in this one. It's something that I only learned very recently, but the way that you cite documents like this, Article 7, Section 1, Clause H, the way that you cite that, like the proper way to do it would be like this. That's the proper way to cite it. So just keep that in mind. Apologies, that's something that I noticed when I reread this. But so let's hear from Kate. Were you able to read this one?
I'm finishing reading it now.
Okay. If you can, just like tell us when you're done. Tell us about what the paragraph is talking about, like the solutions presented in it, and how that relates to what South Africa is talking about.
I mean, South Africa just wants to, I don't know how to word this. South Africa is advocating for, let me find the word, special procedures in order to ensure the safety and equality of LGBTQ plus persons in Muslim communities.
Yes. Yes. So let's go a bit further with that. So the way that we write the fourth paragraph is first we establish what the country wants to happen. So the delegate of South Africa believes that the actions of the Chechen government constitute a crime against humanity under Article 7.1h of the Rome Statute and require a three-part solution in order to provide meaningful relief to the oppressed LGBTQ plus individuals. Right there, first paragraph, we've already set the tone to what we want to do, right? So this is a three-part solution. So first is first, and then second, and then finally. Right there, we can already start establishing what it is that we're looking for. So in number one, South Africa calls for the UNHCR to issue a condemnation of the autonomous government of Chechnya for its sustained arbitrary imprisonment, public humiliation, torture, and killings against the LGBTQ population. So who can tell, what is the first solution?
The South Africa is calling for the UN Human Rights Committee to basically tell Chechnya that they shouldn't be doing this and that it's wrong.
Correct.
Condemnation.
First solution is to issue a condemnation. Now, condemnations of the UNHRC are kind of like they issue them all the time. So this is another trick that you guys want to use. It's called escalation of solutions. So the first ones that you present are a lot lighter, and then the ones that you present at the end are going to be a lot heavier. They're going to be more like heavy-handed things. So first we start small and then we go big. So can someone tell me what the second solution is?
South Africa wants the UN Human Rights Committee to determine whether or not they can be prosecuted in international law because of the actions they've taken. Chechnya has taken.
UNHRC.
Oh, my bad.
The ILC. Refer the matter to the ILC. So what we're doing here is instead of the UNHRC, maybe kind of a trick that you guys can use, is instead of saying we want to sanction them, you'll say, we want to know if it's the right thing for us to sanction them. It gives you a lot more negotiating power in that your solutions seem a lot less radical, and that they can be enacted in a way that's in line with what the UNHRC does. UNHRC doesn't impose sanctions, but it can talk to other agencies and say, yo, are sanctions good at this time? Make sense? Make sense? Cool. So it's number 2. So number 3. Let's read number 3. I'm gonna call him Faith for this one, so you're up to bat. So number 3. To read the third solution and tell me like what it is.
Like, read the solution, like all of it.
Yeah, it's only two sentences.
Oh, okay. Finally, the UNHRC must request that its special procedures to produce a plan through which majority Muslim nations and communities can begin a process of gradual tolerance of the LGBTQ plus community. Specifically, the special procedures should look at starting community discussions on social equality and involving Muslim clergy in providing an argument in favor of the LGBTQ plus tolerance in line with the words of the Quran.
Yes, the Quran.
So basically it's saying like they're trying to get Muslims to slowly like tolerate the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So this one in particular, this solution takes it a lot further than Chechnya. You guys don't need to do this. If you have like a specific, like if you have a topic that is sufficiently involved that you can affect, like let's say, I don't know, something going on in Benin, you guys can do all of your proposed solutions on it. However, Chechnya is part of the Russian Federation. Russia Security Council, they don't like letting any UN intervention going on there. So something you can do is when you're in those solutions, you look at the greater issue at play, which is tolerance of LGBTQ plus individuals, and you try and find a broader framework for helping that, not just specifically in Chechnya, but everywhere that's affected. In this case, what South Africa is calling for is a plan through which majority Muslim nations can begin a process of gradual tolerance of the LGBTQ plus community. This solution, at least personally to me, like reading it again, isn't the 100% best, but with some refinement in when you're writing the working paper, this can actually be really good. And it can be a really innovative solution towards alleviating the problem. And then just conclude it with a final sentence. With this comprehensive plan, South Africa aims at forcefully targeting the crimes against humanity taking place in Chechnya, while also addressing the underlying cultural barriers to LGBTQ plus acceptance in Muslim communities in order to create a more equal and socially harmonious world. So, let's get some people talking about this. Did this position paper make clear the international response and its minimal effect on actually solving the issue? This position paper clearly identified the topic. Did it make a connection between the topic and the nation's policy? And did this position paper present novel, innovative solutions with ample details? I think we'd all say yes, right? That'd be a big problem with me if I wasn't able to do this. So yeah. Those questions at the bottom are the ones that you will be asking yourself, and the ones that we will ask when reading your position papers is exactly those questions. Did the position paper make clear all of those points? For freshmen who are joining us, do you have any questions on those? Wonderful. Alrighty, let's move on.
Right.
So, prepared speeches. Isabel, you have the floor.
Okay, so guys, I'll be going over the prepared speeches today. So usually for prepared speeches, they're usually given at the beginning or during the conference, normally during when the chair reopens the speakers list, because that's the only speech you're like 100% sure you're gonna wanna speak in. It's usually to state what your stance on the topic is, what your plans are, what are the impacts of it, and overall why this is happening. So prepared speeches are given at the beginning and throughout the conference. We are here to help you learn how to write your prepared speeches and how to present them. So of course, we're going to be going, so this is for the Unit 4, which we'll be going more in depth on. You will actually get to write your own prepared speech for your conference, and then you'll have to give one prepared speech in front of the team and then one impromptu speech, which will give you a couple prep minutes. So prepared speeches are actually very short. They range from 45 seconds to a minute and 30, and usually you'll vote on the time limit at the beginning of the conference. At the beginning of your speech, you are gonna wanna hook something that grabs the attention of your audience. This can be a quote, a statistic, an anecdote, anything that like draws your audience into like the topic at hand. So I'll show you an example on Alejandro's and my speeches because those are the next two. In your speech, you're going to want to state why this is a problem, but where it's happening. So in his position paper, which I'll be going back to this, the problem was in Chechnya. Is that how you pronounce it? Chechnya, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Chechnya.
Chechnya and the LGBTQ rights, and he'll show you. You'll see it in his speech. And then at the end of your speech, you're going to state why this is a problem, where it's happening, what's affecting and causing, what's it impacting, and then why is it happening in the first place. Usually, so why is it happening? Could be religious reasons, could be something to do with the government, could just be the people's overall opinion of it. Where it's happening is usually where the topic is going to be focused on. So going back to his topic, his was in Chechnya, mine was in the Middle East. What's it affecting and causing? So mine, which I'm going to keep using this as an example, women's lack of education in the Middle East, it was affecting like not developing countries not being able to become more developed and affecting women of not being able to get stable jobs or get out of the whole patriarchy system there. And then lastly, in your speech, you're going to want to make a solution to the problem. You're not going to have to go really in depth, but you just want to give a speech with a solution so the other delegates know you have already like a backup solution or some kind of plan, some kind of solvent plan already and what you might want to go off of when you get in contact with other delegates. So that's the whole layout. So you're going to want to hook why this is happening, where it's happening, what's it affecting or impacting, and lastly, at the end, you're going to want some sort of solvent solution to it. You can switch slides, Alejandro. So Alejandro, do you want to perform this speech?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this speech, I didn't end up actually giving it in front of the committee. I moved into crisis last minute. However, this speech, I was pretty happy about it. It's like a good baseline for like a good opening speech. This is a speech that takes, I'm gonna time myself for this one actually. I believe it takes like a minute 15, a minute 20, which is a bit more than I'd like you guys to do. However, if you guys are presented with like a really crazy time limit, like 45 seconds, which does happen, it sucks, but it does happen. What you guys want to do is basically like write in the most important parts and just speed through it. So I actually don't know how long this takes me. I haven't done it in a while. So I'm gonna give this speech, show you guys like what it is that they're looking for in terms of tone, presentation. I would say looking around the room, but we're not looking around the room anymore. And so yeah, this is a bit easier to give speeches now, but again, all about the voice now. So much more about the voice, less about like the body. An important thing about that is that in committee, you get really nervous. So there'll be a thing of like people pacing around or like fiddling or like, you know, their hands moving or shaking. Now you don't have that problem. So all you need to do is just speak to the camera. All right, let's get started. One of them started kicking me. I dropped to the floor, flat on my stomach. Then they made me kneel on the floor and put metal clips on my thumbs. He turned the knob, first slowly and then faster and faster. With every turn, my hands bounced up and excruciating pain went through them. He stopped when I screamed my heart was about to burst. Delegates, the United Nations Council on Human Rights is faced with an ultimatum today. Will we decide that Russia's denial of gay people's existence in Chechnya is valid and requires no further action beyond a gentle request for investigation? Or will we recognize Chechnya's actions for what they are, a crime against humanity, acts committed by a government as part of a systematic attack directed against the civilian population with knowledge of said attack? South Africa implores this committee to issue a formal condemnation of the Chechen government's actions and to refer the situation to the International Legal Commission in order to gather more information and determine whether government officials can be sanctioned under international criminal law. Furthermore, the UNHRC must call upon the special procedures to produce a multifaceted plan to assist Muslim communities on a path towards gradual acceptance of the LGBTQ+ community, with involvement from Muslim imams and scholars. With these provisions, the delegate hopes that we, as one body, can make a true positive difference in the lives of the oppressed individuals of Chechnya and the global LGBTQ+ community. The delegate looks forward to cooperating with the other members of this august body and yields the remaining time to the chair. Thank you. That was 1 minute and 27 seconds. So this was a 1:30 speech for sure. Yeah, definitely important to know that this was like a 1:30 speech. Whoopsies. So this speech starts with a hook that I pulled from here. This hook is actually part of eyewitness reports that were included in the Special Rapporteur's report to the UNHRC. This was actually like something that someone in Chechnya really did say, and he reported it to the UN. And yeah, it's really graphic, and that gives you a very visceral reaction from the people who are listening, and that they can actually like see it in their minds. And when you already have that, you don't need that, but if you're able to get it, it's the best one to get because you're already engaging your audience. You start by saying that the UN is facing an ultimatum. So you're describing this as a very important issue, and you're drawing a line in the sand. You're saying, are we going to do this or are we going to do this? And because you kind of phrase it in a way that's like, are we saying that Russia's denial is valid and requires no further action beyond the gentle request? The way that you're putting in those adjectives make it seem like, okay, this is not very good. We know what he's telling us and what he wants us to do. And or will we recognize Chechnya's actions for what they are, a crime against humanity? Right afterward, I actually provide the definition for a crime against humanity. It was written right in the Rome Statute, right here. You don't need to provide the definitions. However, if you're talking something about something that is as serious as crimes against humanity, you want to provide it. So here, we give all three solutions that we mentioned in the position paper. So I'm going to change the color on that. Right here. Hold on. All of this right here is directly from the position paper. So you don't need to do any more writing. All you need to do is just package it, if that makes sense. And then after that, one second. Apologies. So the first part is just South Africa, all those solutions are being presented by South Africa. You want to finish it with one unifying statement and saying that, we're all in this together and we together can make a real difference by following the solutions that I am proposing. And then after that, very, 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 very important, because the chairs will always ask you for this. Oopsies. Here it is. Always yield your time to the chair. Always yield your time to the chair. Are there any questions about this one? in action, thank you for joining us. We are going over speeches right now, prepared speeches. Again, are there any questions about the speech? Nope, all right.
My turn. So mine was actually a little longer than his because I actually cut it down before the actual GOMUN conference, but okay. According to the UN, everyone has a right to an education, as it is part of the economic and cultural rights of each person. However, women in the Middle East are subjugated to follow certain traditions that obstruct their path to a basic education, which thus leading them to a future with further hindrance to higher education. The education system is heavily affected by the patriarchal system, which portrays women as secondary citizens to men. The school curriculum is constructed in a way that initially teaches girls to become good mothers, nurses, or teachers, and usually no more. Therefore, Brunei urges this committee to advocate for young women to have access to basic education while still being culturally sensitive to the religions and traditional practices within these communities. To accomplish such a task, this committee needs to refer to the UNGEI, United Nations program that was implemented to improve the lives and educations of girls and young women around the world. In order to increase the number of young women in attendance in school, UNGEI needs to build and strengthen collaborations with more countries, including both developing and developed. The only way to break down these barriers to an education barriers to an education that women face is to address the problem internally and externally. Providing proper female education will lead to progress in developing Middle East countries. It will transform earnings of standards of living, child marriages, early childbirth bearing, fertility, population growth, and etc. Brunei looks forward to cooperating with the other members of this committee to overcome barriers women face for education, and yields the rest of the time to the chair. Thank you. So I actually wrote too much for this one, so that's why I cut it down, and it's hard for me to read directly from the paper sometimes, so I'll sometimes tweak it during my speech, but overall I always like the speech. I gave a hook at the beginning according to the UN. Wait, let me find the annotation button right here. It was just, I found a statement that the UN allowed everybody to have education and that would still economic and cultural rights, which was actually part of the UNESCO statement. So, and since I was in this committee, I brought it up. And I also followed up with Middle East are subjugated to follow certain tradition. Sorry, I can't draw on the state line. Because one of the biggest obstacles that most people face was that the patriarchal system made the boys go get the education and the women stay home. So by trying to, thank you, Alejandro, by trying to show that this was actually a thing and that it was a problem, I was managing to set up the committee to give my solution, which was the UNGEI, and establish collaboration and bring awareness to the topic. My position paper and actual resolution goes much more in depth into my I can't speak today, into my solution, but I always liked this speech because it addressed why it was a problem, it addressed where it was affected, and it gave it a solution. So, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, by the way, if I were grading this this prepared speech, the thing that I'd say about it, and for you guys to keep in mind, is that, and I know because Isabel cut this down, is that at the beginning, like all of this is just kind of talking about the subject. And that's good if it's an obscure topic, but especially because you're in the UN, if you're in UNESCO, you're talking about barriers to women, like people know that women aren't like 100% in the Middle East. That's like pretty well known. So really in this, the only thing that I include, like if I were cutting this down, is the school curriculum is constructed in a way that initially teaches girls to become good mothers and no more. Right there, bam, that's all you need for that. If we're like shaving it down to be like a minute. Therefore, Brunei urges the committee to advocate for young women to have access to basic education while still being culturally sensitive. This is really big. You know why? Because she's representing Brunei. She's representing Brunei, which, as if you guys don't know this, is not exactly the best,
Most radical
and the
country.
most human rights loving country in the world. So you guys, when you're doing that, and especially if you're representing a country like Brunei, you need to be really balancing solutions with status quo. In this case, Brunei would most advocate for the status quo. So you want to find a way to be more pro status quo while still giving an olive branch to the other delegates and showing like we do want to do something about this. Personally, I would like make the solutions a bit more in depth, but I mean, it's fine. It's fine. That stuff takes time, and also I'll say it's my fault because I just kind of threw this at Isabel. I'm like, yo, we have like 2 weeks. Write your speech. Alrighty, let's clear this. Any questions about this speech?
No? Okay.
All right. Isabel, do you want to talk about the subtopic-based thinking?
I can talk about it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So subtopic based thinking. So this is kind of what I was rambling on about last week, if you guys were here. So basically, for Model UN, you have your position paper, you have your speech, and it's all centered around a topic. So obviously you need to know a lot about that topic. And most topics, like, we want to make them not too broad. So like how Alejandro was talking just a while ago about Isabel's speech about women's rights. Okay, so we all know that women deserve rights or whatever, and most countries agree with that. So you don't need to convince people about women's rights. You kind of need to offer more solutions than just talking about it, because we're already on board with that. So subtopic based thinking is, instead of having this big broad idea in your head, you take that broad idea and you narrow it down so you reach a more specific topic than this broad topic that a lot of people already know about. And when it's something more specific, then you can elaborate in your speeches and in your position paper about what it is, and bring awareness to it to other countries. So some tips that I put here for subtopic-based thinking. Just in general for topic-based thinking, you want to make sure that you're up to date with current events happening around the world. In your free time, we recommend that obviously you watch the news, you read articles, and you do proper research on stuff you find interesting in your own time, because you can actually like relate that back to Mali UN, and if you see something interesting that you've probably never heard about before, then maybe other people haven't heard about it, and you can use it in Model UN. And point number 2, Model UN is a real world simulation. So you must be able to recount history and events. So basically with this topics, you need to know topics. Like, you need to know general topics. You don't need to know specific, because people will help you like learn the history of that in their speeches at conferences, and they'll give you the background information. But in general, you should already have some knowledge about a bunch of topics going on around the world or that have happened in the past. And then number 3, I kind of talked about this last week as well, about like involving GA Plin. So remember to focus on a topic you think other countries will be on board with. Don't get too broad or too specific. So I know I just said get specific, but you don't want to get too specific, because then people won't be interested in what you have to talk about, because it won't apply to them. It'll only apply to your country and what you think. And so you want to find that sweet spot in between where it can apply to other countries, but it's also not too broad to like people already know about it and care about it, and it's not something that that they haven't heard about before. And once you found your subtopic, research everything you can about it. Just like go through the UN archives, look at what people have said in the past about it probably, and do this so that you can be prepared for questions from other delegates, because you need to know your topic as well as you can, so you can get people on board with what ideas you're proposing, and you can answer any questions that they may have. And yeah, I think that's it.
Absolutely. Very, very good insights, Gabby. There's one thing I'll say. I actually disagree with the fact that you said that you can't go too in depth. Yes, you absolutely. There's no depth that you cannot go to in researching. However, even though you can know about it, the important thing, and what Gabby said, is that you don't always need to tell other delegates about it. As in, like, you don't want to include in your speech the fact that in 2017, 2.5% of a certain macaw species were going extinct in this one region of Tanzania. Like, nobody cares. But because you know it, you already have a lot of background information. You've obviously already researched a lot, and that could be something that you include in the preambulatories of your working paper, which is what we'll hopefully be able to talk about next week. And yeah, basically what she said, was totally accurate. However, even though you might not include the really nitty-gritty stuff, you still want to have it written down somewhere. All right. Are there any questions? All righty. If there are none, that is the conclusion of this meeting. I'd like for, one second. I'd like for some of our freshmen to stay after for a second. So I'm going to stop the recording. Mr. Anderson, thank you very much for coming. We always appreciate your attendance. And I believe that'll be all. Mr. Anderson, before you leave, let me stop the recording.